Breaking tonight, chaos in Caracas, Venezuela. The political turmoil unleashed after Nicolas Maduro claimed victory in the South American country's presidential election. There are widespread accusations of fraud, with the U.S. and other countries casting doubt on the results. CBS's Lilia Luciano is the only U.S. network correspondent inside Venezuela.
Thousands of demonstrators are taking to the streets across Venezuela tonight to protest what they say is an attempt by Nicolás Maduro to steal the country's election.
There's a lot of tear gas that's been deployed by police. We're seeing a group of protesters. We can't figure out how many, but there's perhaps a few hundred there, a few dozen. The line is back there. There's a few of them that are trying to the line of police. There's some of them throwing back the canisters that are being thrown at them, and police are assembling in large numbers over here to confront them.
Venezuela's strongman Nicolás Maduro has claimed victory for a third term, despite exit polls showing challenger Edmundo González ahead by more than 30 points. The international community has joined those calls for transparency, as they did in Maduro's last disputed election win in 2018.
We have serious concerns that the result announced does not reflect the will or the votes of the Venezuelan people.
We're seeing a group of protesters in the front of the line throwing the canisters of tear gas back at police. There's a lot of police motorcycles here confronting them. You're seeing a lot of tear gas. The group of protesters back there, some of them told us that they assembled peacefully, and that's when police started arriving and all of this confrontation started taking place. Nora.
Wow, Lilia Luciano, thank you for your reporting.
We've seen the announcement just a short while ago by the Venezuelan Electoral Commission. We have serious concerns that the result announced does not reflect the will or the votes of the Venezuelan people. It's critical that every vote be counted fairly and transparently, that election officials immediately share information with the opposition and independent observers without delay, and that the electoral authorities publish the detailed tabulation of votes. The international community is watching this very closely and will respond accordingly.
We want to tell all Venezuelans and to the entire world that Venezuela has a new president-elect, and that is Edmundo González Urrutia. We won, and everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. I want you to know that this was something so overwhelming, so big, that we won in every sector of the country.
And that means defeating Kamala Harris in a landslide. We want a landslide this November. We want something too big to rig, too big to rig. Too big to rig. Too big to rig. Too big to rig.
Welcome everyone to the Wake Up Call channel. What you're seeing is a blueprint, a script playing out on a world stage. I've covered this a few times over the last couple of years, with other countries like Brazil having the same exact script as America with a Capitol riot. It's very important to watch the repetitive themes here because this is being deliberately done. Now, for those of you that are new to my channel, I am not a Republican. I am not a Democrat. I do not believe in either party. If this was real, if your vote actually counted, obviously, as a Christian and a conservative person, I would lean towards the Republican Party. But bet your bottom dollar in the year 2024, the only reason you're seeing the New World Order move forward with the stuff that they're doing is because everyone in Congress is compromised. Everybody needs to get that through their head. As much as they want to put their emotions into the party, put their emotions into Trump, realize that they've made Trump into this character, into this victim, so that you feel that way. And that when they pull a coup in the United States of America, you will be in full support of whatever Donald Trump says or does. Now, this is done by design to prevent actual revolutions from occurring. And what they don't want you to know is the real way to stop this from going forward isn't an uprising. It isn't a riot on the Capitol buildings. These are the things the government wants you to do. They're doing this stuff knowing how you're going to react. What the civilians should be doing is disengaging, meaning that the civilians should all band together. No one should pay their taxes anymore. And they could let these people who pretend to be elected show up every day in Congress and act out these acts that they're doing, pretending that they're working, pretending that they're serving us, and let them go do it. Let them go play their fictional charades of a Congress that they play every day. Let them show up at the Capitol building. The civilians don't need the Capitol building. The civilians don't need these people because these people are not working for the civilians, but they need to keep you emotionally invested. And they know that people are seeing what's happening in Venezuela, listening to even the United States Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, speaking about, oh, well, we want to make sure everybody's vote counts, when they know the majority of U.S. citizens feel like there's no chance that any of these Democrats are actually winning these elections. And of course, did that speech sound very familiar? The person who was running, who was supposedly screwed out of office in Venezuela, how they deny the election. There's no way that those election results can be real. Venezuela's far right refusing to recognize electoral results. And of course, violent protests break out, all started by conservatives, right? It's the same exact script. They don't have the time to write a single script for every single country, but what they do is they have a blueprint for every country, and the news is covering it the same exact way, as you can see on the screen right now. This is what the news was telling everybody out there. Of course, remember, all media is controlled, all mainstream media, the conservative media and the Democrat media controlled. This is what the news was telling everybody before the outcome of this election, right? That Edmundo Gonzalez was winning 71.9% versus 12% for the other guy. I'd say that's a bit of a landslide, right? And of course, we all know that the polls that they show are all man-made. They're all fake. Remember that whenever you see a poll, it's to manipulate you, to persuade you, and to condition you into thinking that this is the way that something's going to go, only for them to eventually pull the rug out from underneath you, like they just did in Venezuela. So they were telling everybody out there, gaslighting them, that this was what was going to happen. This guy was winning in a landslide, only to somehow lose, right? So everybody's now denying it. People are in the streets. Protesters in Venezuela are contesting the presidential election. As you heard, even in America, they're questioning it as well. So what's the ultimate goal? Well, let's start with that. The ultimate goal, other than, of course, divide and conquer, order out of chaos, is a digital ID. A digital ID. You may have noticed one of the photos that they've been showing in regards to this fake election. Remember, both of these parties are completely compromised, and the New World Order would not be moving forward without having both parties compromised. Why would they ever do this if they only had the Democratic Party compromised? They're causing this chaos deliberately among civilians while the people in power are fully compromised, which means the Trumps of this world, which means the Bidens of this world. It means the Republicans and Democratic political figures are working together. And they know at the end of the day, the civilians will put their hope in these martyr conservative figures that they're making, right? But one of the pictures that was circulating was both of these guys going and voting, right? They always love to show us, Biden or Trump going to the ballots. Oh, and then they try to tell you, like, they're even going to vote, so you have to vote. This is to emotionally invest you into thinking that your vote actually counts. And of course, empowering you, making you think that this is still some type of a republic. So there you see them, right? And literally voting in cardboard boxes. This is one of the common themes in America with the border crisis, right? That they've created, a self-created border crisis, but not for the reasons that you think, of course. The digital ID is the goal at the end of the day, and conservatives are going to get manipulated into this because of the border crisis. Remember, there are things that both sides are going to want and agree on. They expect you to do that with the outbreak that occurred and the magic potions that they released. They expected all Republicans to go and get it while Trump was still in power, then to transition over to Biden, and for all the Democrats to go and get it. But it didn't work out how they hoped. Watch stories like this and how Donald Trump, who's also pushing freedom cities, which is a smart city with a new name, are pushing for a digital ID. The only way to make sure your vote is actually accounted for and that they can't scam the votes by having these handwritten mail-in ballots. Now, the real way to solve that problem would be to actually record every single person, like on a Truman Show type of show, going and casting their ballots. Now, it sounds like a crazy notion, but that's really the only way to trust any election. You can't trust any of these people. They're all members of the same secret societies, and they're all working hand in hand. So they showed you this picture of them voting inside of a cardboard box because they're getting ready to prepare you with the outcome of this election to demand change, to demand infrastructure change. And of course, the digital ID is going to play a big role in that. Now, one of the things to note is that the protesters are far-right protesters. Sound familiar? Election deniers. Sound familiar? Same script. And the quote from this guy who supposedly won Maduro, he said without evidence that the majority of the protesters were hate-filled criminals and that their plan was hatched in the United States. So you're getting this similar narrative here with conservatives, conservative alt-right, election denying. This is a blueprint that they're using. It's a blueprint that's happening around the world. How come right now nobody's suspicious about why this is the common theme in every single country? Every country. Have there been years where the elections have been denied? Yeah, in America in 2000, Al Gore versus Bush, it was denied. Some people denied the outcome of the election. You weren't hearing at the same time that there was election denying going on in Brazil and Venezuela and Chile, all these other countries. No, you didn't hear that. Right now, it is the same exact script to a T, acting out in every single country, right? I covered this a couple of years ago in 2022. In Brazil, it was the same exact script. They told everybody that this guy, Lula, had no chance, another World Economic Forum puppet, but remember, they all are. They were saying he had no chance, right? He was not going to win. Then, of course, they announced that he won, right? And look at this script, which I covered to a T. Even Bill Maher says Brazil handled their Trump better than the U.S. We're just blank people than we used to be. We're worse off people. So what is he referring to? Well, he's referring to the same exact script in Brazil because guess what? They conveniently, after we had our January 6th staged Capitol riot, which was staged by our own government, in Brazil, they had the same exact riot verbatim. The same thing. So all of these people somehow got together and they decided we're going to go to the Capitol building of all the places and all the things that they could do to actually protest the government, which again, the common sense thing would be you don't use violence. You just say you're no longer our government. We are breaking away from this government because this government has not proven that they're working for the people. They're not proving that they're even being voted in. They're just telling us on the same television set that they own and operate because it's state-run media. So in other words, the people should be disbanding and saying, you guys could go play make-believe every day and show up at the Senate and show up at the House. You could wear your suits and you could pretend like you're actually working for us and serving us. But we're not going to fund you anymore. We're not going to pay you with our tax money. In fact, we'll set up our own government away from yours because you violated the Constitution, because you're all clearly members of the same secret societies, which by definition makes you guilty of treason, an act, of course, that could be judged by death, right? But I'm not calling for that, of course. I'm saying that people should just disband from this, right? Here's the next story. We just saw the same script where? We just saw it in France. They had their snap elections, right? Look at the headlines. French left coalition comes out on top in elections in shock upset over the far right, right? And then, of course, the liberal media. France dodged a bullet. Voters deny extreme far right, right? And then, of course, what happens? Well, the conservatives say that the French were plotting a Capitol-style insurrection. The conservatives are saying that the French rigged that election. Why is it the common theme? It's the common theme because they want everybody to be so upset without realizing that your vote never counts in the first place, that they just want a digital ID to get you to want a digital ID, because problem, reaction, solution is how this works. And here, let's turn to America. Let's turn to America because never before has a political figure had more support than Donald Trump. Now, the media, of course, tries to pretend like Donald Trump doesn't have the support, but everybody out there knows that they're deliberately rolling out candidates like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden who wouldn't win in 1 trillion years, ever in any election. You'll find a small amount of people who are communists by definition, who will vote blue no matter who's put in front of them, but they're giving you the ultimate extremes. They're giving you incompetency with the Democratic Party, and then, of course, they're telling you what? They're telling you that Donald Trump is under attack from these people, which makes you want Donald Trump, which makes you think that Donald Trump is going to stop this corruption from continuing to spread. And then, of course, you get this narrative, which is, I'll show you the repetition right now. Too big to rig. That is the narrative that we're hearing. All the media is talking about since the staged assassination attempt, since that deliberate staged photo, that they're using that quote unquote iconic photo to make you believe that there is no way, there is no chance that Donald Trump loses this election. That's what they're telling us. And in fact, they're telling us to a point that it's too big this time around. They might have rigged it last time, but it's too big to rig this time around because nobody in their right mind is going to vote for Kamala Harris, right? It's too big to rig.
And that means defeating Kamala Harris in a landslide. We want a landslide this November. We want something too big to rig, too big to rig. Too big to rig.
We can talk about the policies. We can talk about how he's going to make America great again. But guess what? If you don't vote tomorrow, you don't encourage your friends, family, people at church, your neighbors, your coworkers to do it, it simply will not happen. You say this during your rallies, and I love the sign. It says, too big to rig.
Right. We want to be too big to rig. But the too big to rig we're really thinking about November 5th.
Elections, let me tell you, if we could have honest elections in this country, I would have stopped campaigning 2 weeks ago. We would have had it made. But we don't have that, so we're watching it very carefully, and I'm working my ass off to make sure we get too big to rig. Too big. We want to be too big to rig. You know, there gets to be a point where they can't rig it, so we have an expression. Charlie and I were just talking. It's called too big to rig. But until then, Republicans must win. We want a landslide. We have to win. We have to win so that it's too big to rig. Too big to rig. Too big to rig.
And of course, there's nothing that's too big to rig because none of it's real in the first place. In fact, they want you to believe that it's too big to rig because nobody's going to know anybody that would actually vote for Kamala, which makes what they did with Biden make more sense. Because the only person that they could have possibly put in that spot that people would have looked around and said, oh, there's no chance, which is one of the reasons I didn't even think it was a possibility with Kamala Harris, is Kamala Harris. Why? Because Kamala Harris has been portrayed as a bumbling buffoon worse than Joe Biden. Kamala Harris is all the stuff that the media has released deliberately has shown people nothing but what? Incompetency, can't complete sentences, the cackling laugh. Nobody will believe it. In fact, it's too big to rig, isn't it? It's too big to rig. Do you see what's coming? Do you see how this is planned out? Now, the other thing with the too big to rig is that Fox News and some of the media outlets are reporting that Kamala Harris can win, right? And Donald Trump is losing his cool over it. He's saying, how are they saying that they can win? How are they saying that Kamala Harris has a chance to win when the majority of people subconsciously are all saying this thing is over? You actually heard them on the television set telling you since the assassination, it's a slam dunk. There's no way the Democrats are going to win now after they tried to kill Donald Trump. There's no way. More people are obsessed with Trump than ever before, right? That's all that we've heard about, which makes it the perfect opportunity to pull the rug out underneath the conservative party. And again, there will be riots, there will be protests, but here's the problem. The problem is that that's what they want, and their solution is going to come out of that. Whether that's going into red and blue states based on political affiliation, because remember, they're making it so it's unlivable for Republicans to live among Democrats and Democrats to live among Republicans. Extreme on one side, extreme on the other. The trans stuff on one side, the mockery of Christianity on one side, the gaslighting we're seeing. What's the other side? The other side is extreme with guns, the anti-abortion stuff, all these things that conveniently have happened the past couple of years with the Supreme Court, like Roe v. Wade, that have gaslit people on each side so that they're perfectly fine, no longer living among the opposite political party. And don't forget about that magic potion, because don't forget about the mandates that are put in place. And don't forget the laws that they passed, okay, after everything occurred in states like New York. The quarantine ban laws that are in place where they could come to your home and put you in a quarantine. These are all things they've put in place because there's another outbreak that's planned. Quietly on the backside of all this stuff, we're still hearing about the bird flu. That's because there's going to be another fake outbreak because they need to get nanotechnology inside of your body, period, in your bloodstream. I know that they spray it on us from the skies. I know they put it in our food. They want direct hits into the veins, okay? So there's going to be another one, but it's about more than just that. It's obviously about control. It's about compliance. It's about you doing what they say without even realizing you're doing what they say. So, in other words, the outcome of this fake election is predetermined. They're all predetermined. Does it mean that every single political leader is going to be a Democrat? No. Does it mean that Trump isn't going to be placed into power? No, it does not. But we have to read between the lines. And reading between the lines tell us that when they continually make you think that there's no chance at all that Donald Trump is going to lose, and then they tell you that somehow he lost, they're going to push you to a breaking point where you're willing to do what they tell you to do, which goes along with the digital ID. People out there hear about the digital ID and they're not thinking at all about what the consequences of it are and how much control you'll be giving to the government with the digital ID. They don't think about that. They think about, well, I use PayPal, I use the internet. What's the big deal of having a digital ID? Digital ID is the end game for everyone. The digital ID is full-on monitoring and tracking, the government having control over your bank accounts, having control over what you post on Facebook, what you post on YouTube. You will be held accountable and you will be criminalized for saying things online. That's what it's headed towards. But first, they have to get it in place. And a digital ID is the name of the game for them. And this is one of the ways that they're going to try to pull this on people. In America specifically, they're using the border as a way to get conservatives to want a digital ID without them realizing it, by saying that there'll be no illegals in those conservative states. There'll be no illegals running around because everyone will need a digital ID. And that digital ID, you cannot, you'll be tracked completely. You can't make it up. You got to have it. It's all digital. Remember, everything's perfect. They can't rig that. They can't do this. Of course they can, but they'll just tell everybody out there that they can't. So this is all scripted. That's what everybody out there needs to realize. You have to pull yourself out and start saying, well, okay. Well, the globalists are in control. Well, the globalists are in control of all parties. This is causing people to be moved around and herded and manipulated like cattle, like they view us as cattle, like the books that they read in their temples tell us. We're cattle, okay? They're using these things, these psyops, to manipulate you, to make you want this and want that without even realizing that you ever want it in the first place. But you're going to get so upset when you see polls telling you that 80% of the people, even though the poll itself is made up in the first place, and the two people running against each other are really in bed with each other and are really about trying to do the same exact things that the globalists want because they're globalist puppets. But they want you to think, well, the conservative guy isn't one of them. He's talking against them, so he can't be one of them, even though there's millions of photos showing them in bed with each other and best buddies over countless decades, even though their background comes from Hollywood or comes from some acting, background, even like Zelensky in Ukraine. I mean, it's very easy to see. So people go, well, what's the solution? The solution is disengage. Get further away from technology, less dependent on technology, and stop engaging in this stuff and believing in this stuff as if it's actually real. They want you engaged in this. They want you angry at this. They want you to believe their game because the name of their game is problem, reaction, solution. They're causing the problem. They're waiting for you to react, and people will react no matter what the outcome of the fake election is on November 5th in America. They will react. They will be angry because both sides will probably deny it. But of course, if Kamala Harris somehow wins, conservatives in a million years would never believe that, and even some Democrats wouldn't. But they'd go, who cares? Who cares? We're just glad it's not Trump. It doesn't matter to us. As long as Trump's not in, as long as not, they don't even realize the brainwashing they've been put under. If for 10 years they've been told that Trump's the greatest thing since sliced bread, they would feel that way because they don't even know what mind control is. They don't know what hypnosis is. They're all under it. But guess what? So are the MAGA followers. They're in the hypnosis too. Fellow brothers and sisters in Christ in the hypnosis because they're putting their hope and faith in man. This entire system is rigged. This entire game is nothing more than a psychological game that they're playing on you, and they're following the same exact script all over the world right now. Too big, too rigged. We can all see where this is headed. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you as always, and your families.